The applause echoed across the auditorium, but I couldn't move. My name was being called on stage, the valedictorian of our graduating class, and yet I remained frozen in my seat, because in that moment, all I could hear was my father's voice from 4 years ago. He's the real future of this family. You'll figure out life on your own. That day, he handed my entire college fund to my older brother, Jared. Not out of necessity. No, he did it with pride. He looked me in the eye and told me to be smart like your brother if you want to be taken seriously. I didn't argue. I didn't scream. I simply packed my bag, picked up a part-time job at a coffee shop, and enrolled in community college with whatever scholarships I could earn from academic merit. That was 4 years ago. 4 years of silence, grit, and pretending it didn't sting every time I saw Jared's fancy Instagram stories of frat parties and spring break trips funded by the money that was supposed to be mine. But now, here I was, top of my class, scholarship offers lined up, and the guest list for my graduation ceremony missing 2 names, my dad and Jared. They had RSVP'd, regretfully cannot attend, not even bothering to make up an excuse. Still, I stood when they called my name, walked to that stage with every step echoing the silence they left behind. I held the mic in shaky hands, looked out over the sea of families cheering for their kids, and forced a smile. This speech isn't just about perseverance, I said, voice steadying. It's about grace. Sometimes, the people who doubt you the most are the ones you once admired most. But that's okay, because their absence taught you presence. Their silence taught you voice. And their betrayal, it taught you strength. The audience fell quiet. Some clapped. A few parents even wiped tears. But none of them knew what I knew. Tomorrow was the will reading. And I had a sealed envelope in my purse from my late grandfather that I hadn't opened yet. The same envelope the family lawyer had slid into my hand 2 days before and said, "He wanted you to read this privately. But tomorrow, you'll understand why." Something told me it was going to change everything. But not just for me, for them, too. I didn't open the envelope that night. I could have. God knows I stared at it long enough. The off-white paper was slightly yellowed, sealed in red wax with the initials CM, my grandfather's name, Charles Montgomery. The man who, unlike my dad, never once made me feel like an afterthought. The man who showed up to every piano recital, every science fair, every little thing my father found beneath his time. But even my grandfather hadn't said much the last year. Not since the illness took over. And when he passed 3 weeks ago, my father and brother took control of everything, acting like heirs of some dynasty. "Don't worry about tomorrow," my brother Jared had said with that smug smile, the kind that always made me feel like I was 12 again. "Dad says everything's already taken care of. You'll be fine." Fine. I didn't even reply. They expected me to show up at the lawyer's office, sit quietly, accept whatever scraps were left, maybe a framed photo or some heirloom necklace, and disappear again. That was always the role they carved out for me. But they didn't know I had something. Something in my purse that felt heavier than it looked. The next morning, I sat in the back corner of the law firm's waiting area, knees bouncing under my skirt. Across from me sat my father in a tailored gray suit, legs crossed like he owned the building. Jared was scrolling through his phone, Armani sunglasses pushed up into his styled hair like a movie star. Not once did they glance my way. The receptionist called us in, and the 3 of us walked into the conference room with polished mahogany walls and a long table set with water glasses. The family lawyer, Mr. Levins, was already seated, files stacked beside him. He didn't smile, didn't offer a handshake. Just nodded once and said, "We'll begin." He read through the legal formalities first, the estate's debts, the trust allocations, the property value. Jared looked like he'd won the lottery, with every number. My father didn't even blink, as if he'd memorized it all. Then came the moment. "And now," Mr. Levins said, his voice lowering, "a personal letter, addressed by Mr. Montgomery to Ms. Amelia Grace Cartwright, to be opened publicly at the reading of his will, as per his instructions." My father's brows furrowed. Jared actually snorted. "Seriously," he whispered. "Grandpa left her a letter?" I reached into my bag. The envelope was warm now. Or maybe my hands were just cold. Either way, I broke the wax seal. Inside was a handwritten letter. I started reading aloud. To my dearest Amelia, by the time you read this, I will have left this world. But I hope not your heart. I watched you grow with grace in a house where you were often treated like you didn't belong. And that is my greatest regret, remaining silent when I should have defended you louder. You are the reason I rewrote my will. I want this family to hear every word of this next part, so speak clearly, my girl. I looked up. My father's jaw had tensed. Jared leaned forward, suddenly less smug. I continued. You will inherit the farmhouse. The one where we used to watch the stars. It's yours. But more than that, you will also inherit my stake, 85%, in Cartwright Financial Holdings. Your father knows this company well. He helped me build it. He also assumed, foolishly, that he would inherit it. He won't, because he gambled with more than money. He gambled with people. And I do not reward that. The shares are yours, Amelia. Use them how you see fit. Build, protect, or burn it down and rebuild better. But whatever you do, know that you earned every bit of it. I love you. Always. Grandpa. Silence. Jared's sunglasses hit the floor. My father stood abruptly. This is a joke. But Mr. Levins simply slid the official documents across the table and said, It's not. Her name is already on the deeds. And for the first time in years, I looked my father in the eye and said, calmly, You were right. Jared is the future you wanted. But I'm the one Grandpa trusted with the legacy. The silence in the room thickened. My father's mouth opened and closed, but no words came out. Jared had gone pale, so pale it looked like all the blood had drained from his carefully tanned face. The smugness? Gone. And me? I didn't smile. I didn't gloat. I just sat there, still holding the letter, letting it tremble slightly in my hands, because that moment, as clean and quiet as it was, had been boiling inside me for years. But I hadn't known it would come like this. Mr. Levins cleared his throat gently, as if to give my father a polite exit from denial. It's all been notarized. The transfer of ownership and controlling shares of Cartwright Financial Holdings has already been filed. Amelia officially holds majority control as of this morning. The words hit like thunder in a still room. Dad finally spoke, his voice cracking. My father would never do this to me. Levins adjusted his glasses and replied without flinching, Your father trusted people who earned it. That trust had consequences, for better or worse. Jared scoffed and turned to me. What are you even going to do with it? You work at a coffee shop, Amy. I looked him dead in the eye and said softly, Not anymore. After the will reading, I walked out first. The sun outside was blinding, too warm for spring. It felt like a different world from the one I had walked into only 30 minutes earlier. I stepped onto the sidewalk, the letter still in my hand, and just stood there for a second. Cars passed. People walked. Life moved on. But I couldn't, not yet. A few minutes later, Mr. Levins joined me. He didn't say much, just handed me a small folder and said, There's a private note from him in there. One he didn't want read aloud. I nodded. Thank you. He paused. He loved you, you know. He used to talk about how you reminded him of your grandmother. Same fire. Same patience. Same spine. I didn't respond. I couldn't. My throat had closed up. That night, I sat on the porch of the farmhouse, the one Grandpa left me. It smelled like old cedar and lilacs, exactly like I remembered. Nothing fancy. No marble countertops. No ocean views. Just a small swing that creaked with the breeze and a sky wide enough to swallow every thought. I opened the second letter in the folder. Amelia, if you're reading this here, it means you came home. Not the house, home. This place. This porch. This air. It's all part of who you are. Don't let the noise of the world make you forget what quiet feels like. The company is yours now. But don't let it consume you. Build something better. Kinder. Wiser. Be the kind of leader your father never became. You're not just the future of this family. You're the family. Love. Grandpa. I wiped my eyes and read it again. And for the first time in my life, I felt seen, not as the second choice, not as the forgotten sibling, not as the girl who made do, but as the one who stayed kind when it was easier to grow bitter. That night, I didn't plot revenge. I planned a beginning. The next morning, the world woke up the same, but I didn't. I stood in the kitchen of the old farmhouse, staring at the faded tiles I used to dance barefoot across when I was 10, my hands wrapped around a chipped mug Grandpa had never let anyone throw away. The smell of black coffee filled the space, but my thoughts were elsewhere. Circling around the storm I had quietly walked through all these years. I had no intention of tearing anyone down. Not my father. Not Jared. That wasn't the point. That was their way. Pride, control, posturing. But me? I'd learned something powerful in silence. Kindness, when chosen again and again by someone with every right to be bitter, becomes something else. It becomes strength. I wasn't just going to be a CEO. I was going to be a different kind of leader. By noon, I was seated inside the headquarters of Cartwright Financial Holdings. And the looks I received when I walked in, well, they said it all. A few employees offered uncertain smiles, clearly not sure how to address the new boss. Some whispered, one even asked if I was here for an interview. But I walked through the office with the calm of someone who had nothing left to prove. At the top floor, I stood outside the glass office that used to belong to my grandfather, and now belonged to me. Inside was the acting interim CEO, Thomas Maddox, a tall, polished man in his late 50s with silver temples and a sharp gaze. He stood when I entered. "Miss Cartwright," he said formally, though his expression held curiosity. "We've been expecting you." I extended a hand. "Please call me Amelia." He shook it firmly. "Your grandfather spoke highly of you. Did he also tell you I'd be taking over?" Maddox nodded. "He mentioned it in his final directive. I'll admit, it surprised the board. But after reading your academic record and scholarship achievements, I'm inclined to believe the decision was well placed." I exhaled, grateful not to be met with open condescension. Still, I could sense skepticism behind the politeness. A girl in her early 20s, no corporate experience, walking into an empire? That wasn't exactly a fairy tale ending. But I had a plan. "Mr. Maddox," I said, sitting across from him, "I'm not here to pretend I know everything. I don't. But I know people. And I know how it feels to be overlooked, unheard, and unseen. This company will change. From the inside out." He tilted his head. "You're suggesting a restructuring?" "I'm suggesting a rehumanizing," I replied softly. "We start listening to the lowest paid employees. We implement mental health support. We offer paid internship opportunities for girls from underfunded communities. And we build bridges, not walls." There was a long pause. Then, slowly, a smile crept onto his face. "Well," he said, "that would certainly shake up our quarterly reports." I returned the smile. "Then let's shake them up." Over the next few days, I dove in, not with arrogance but with quiet fire. I stayed late learning financial breakdowns, sat in meetings just to listen, took notes during every department head discussion. I shadowed janitors and assistants, asked receptionists what changes they would make. And slowly, the tone changed. People started greeting me with genuine warmth, not forced formality. I was no longer the mystery girl from the will. I was becoming the heart of the place. It was a week later when I ran into my brother. I was coming out of a lunch meeting when I saw him in the lobby, arguing with the security desk. He looked different now, tired, confused, lost in the very building he used to assume he'd control. He spotted me and his mouth curled into a half-smile. "Nice office. Fancy title." I didn't respond. I just waited. He walked up to me, lowering his voice. "You know this is insane, right? You're not built for this world. You're gonna crash." I met his eyes, calm and steady. "You think I've made it this far without knowing how to survive?" Jared laughed dryly. "So, what? This is revenge?" I shook my head. "No. If it were, you wouldn't be standing here." He blinked. "You're not throwing me out?" "No," I said simply. "But I'm not handing you power either. You'll earn your place if you want one." There was a beat of silence. "You've changed," he muttered. "No," I replied. "You're just finally seeing me." That night, I sat in my office alone. The moonlight spilled in through the tall windows, casting soft light on the letter now framed behind my desk, the one Grandpa wrote me. I reread the last line, mouthing the words silently. "Be the kind of leader your father never became." And maybe, just maybe, I was. 3 months passed. In those 3 months, everything changed, and yet, in some strange way, everything also found its rightful place. Cartwright Financial Holdings, once a company built on legacy and rigid structure, had become something new. Not because I walked in with a grand plan or a booming voice, but because I walked in with intention, with empathy, and with something none of the men before me ever seemed to value: humility. I implemented every change I had promised. The internship program? Launched. The applications overflowed with stories from young girls who never believed a place like Cartwright would have room for them. One of them, a shy 17-year-old named Kayla, wore the exact same thrift store blazer I wore to my first community college interview. The employees? They weren't just clocking in anymore. There was laughter in the lunchroom, birthday cards on desks, anonymous suggestions in the box that were actually being read and implemented. The profit margins didn't collapse. They grew. Because people perform better when they feel seen. My father hadn't spoken to me directly since the will reading. I'd seen him once, at a gala I was asked to speak at, where he stood near the exit, watching from a distance. When our eyes met, he didn't scowl. He didn't smirk. He simply nodded once. A silent gesture. Perhaps apology. Perhaps recognition. And maybe that was all I needed. But one evening, weeks later, the doorbell rang at the farmhouse. It was Jared. In jeans and a hoodie, no sunglasses, no cocky smirk. Just him. "My brother. Can I come in?" he asked. I stepped aside. He walked slowly, as if the house brought back more memories than he expected. The creaky floorboards, the photo of Grandpa and me fishing, the scent of old wood and peace. "I've been applying for jobs," he said quietly, sitting on the couch. "No one's biting." I sat beside him, not saying a word. "I was stupid," he whispered. "Spoiled. I thought. Dad always said the company was mine, you know? Like it was some kind of birthright." "I know," I replied. He turned to me, his voice thick. "But I never hated you. I just didn't see you. And now I realize how blind that was." My chest tightened. It hurt. A lot. "I know." We sat in silence for a long time. No need to explain every wound. No need to dig them up. "I don't want a handout," he said at last. "But if you'd ever consider, maybe I could start fresh. Prove I can be useful, even if it's just in the mailroom." I smiled gently. "We don't have a mailroom anymore." He chuckled, wiping his face. "Figures. But we do have a mentorship program. And I know someone who might take a chance on a guy trying to do better." His eyes met mine, stunned. "You do that?" "Grandpa believed in second chances," I said. "And I do, too. But only if you take it seriously." He nodded, and for the first time in our lives, there was no competition in his eyes. Just something soft. Something real. The next day, I walked through the company's doors with Jared beside me. Not as a symbol of victory, but as a reminder that kindness isn't weakness. That forgiveness isn't forgetting. And that power, when held with grace, can transform more than just a company. It can transform people. 6 months later, we hosted the first ever Voices of the Future Summit, inviting young women from all over the country to speak, dream, and connect with leaders across industries. I stood on stage, no longer the forgotten daughter or the girl who was told to stay in the background. I was Amelia Cartwright, the CEO, the granddaughter, the leader, the legacy. As I finished my speech and stepped down from the stage, a woman in the audience raised her hand and asked, "What do you think your grandfather would say if he could see all this today?" I smiled, heart full, and answered simply. He'd say, "It was always supposed to be you." And for the first time in my life, I finally believed that.
The echo of my mother's slap wasn't just a sound. It was a declaration. The sting on my cheek spread through my body like wildfire, igniting every ounce of fury and heartbreak within me. I looked at her, stunned, her perfectly manicured hand still raised, her face contorted in a mix of rage and disgust. "You're a disgrace to this family, Amelia," she hissed, her voice dripping with venom. She didn't even look at me. Her gaze burned holes through me, as if I were some ungrateful parasite she had the misfortune of birthing. My father stood beside her, rigid and cold, the very image of authority. His silence was louder than her screams. He always let her do the dirty work. "This isn't just about your behavior, it's about our name," she continued, throwing her hands in the air dramatically. "Do you have any idea what people are saying about us? About you? That the daughter of Michael and Eleanor Carter, one of the richest families in the city, is seen running around with those lowlifes?" I clenched my fists, my nails digging into my palms. "They're not lowlifes. They're my friends." My voice cracked, but I stood my ground. "They've been there for me when no one else was. When you weren't." Her eyes widened, and for a split second, I thought I'd struck a nerve. But then she laughed. A cold, hollow sound that made my stomach churn. "Friends? They're using you, Amelia, and you're too blind to see it." "That's enough," my father finally said, his voice calm but final. He stepped forward, his towering presence casting a shadow over me. "If you want to throw your life away, do it somewhere else. As of this moment, you're no longer a Carter." The words hit me like a freight train. "You're disowning me? Over this? Over my friends?" "You've made your choice," he said, his tone devoid of any emotion. "Pack your things and leave. If you want to live like trash, go live with them." My heart pounded in my chest, the walls of the grand living room suddenly closing in on me. I looked at them, my parents, the people who were supposed to love me unconditionally, and saw nothing but strangers. "You'll regret this," I whispered, my voice trembling. "One day, you'll regret everything you've said and done." My mother smirked. "Don't count on it." I turned on my heel and stormed out, tears streaming down my face. The sound of the grand doors slamming shut behind me was the final nail in the coffin. I was no longer Amelia Carter, the heiress. I was just Amelia. Outside, the world felt colder, harsher. The mansion loomed behind me, its grandeur now a cruel reminder of the life I'd been cast out from. I had no plan, no resources, just the clothes on my back and the determination burning in my chest. My phone buzzed in my pocket. It was Sarah, my best friend since high school. "Hey, you okay? You sound like you've been crying," she said the moment I answered. "They kicked me out," I choked out, the reality of the situation finally sinking in. "What?" Her voice rose with shock and anger. "Why? What happened?" "I'll tell you everything later," I said, my voice shaky. Can I crash at your place? Just for tonight?" "Of course. You don't even have to ask." An hour later, I found myself on Sarah's couch, clutching a warm cup of tea she had made for me. Her apartment was small and modest, a stark contrast to the sprawling mansion I'd grown up in, but it felt warmer, more welcoming. "They're insane," Sarah said after I finished telling her everything. "Who cares who your friends are? They should be proud of you for standing up for what you believe in. They've always cared more about their reputation than about me," I said bitterly. "It's always been about appearances, about being perfect." "Well, screw them," she said firmly. "You don't need their money or their approval. You're stronger than they think." Her words gave me a small flicker of hope. Maybe she was right. Maybe this was my chance to prove them wrong. But the road ahead felt daunting, and I had no idea where to start. The next morning, reality hit hard. I had no job, no income, and no idea how to navigate a world I'd been shielded from my entire life. Sarah offered to help, but I didn't want to burden her more than I already had. "I'll figure it out," I told her as I got ready to leave. "Thank you for everything." "You don't have to go," she said, her brow furrowed with concern. "Stay as long as you need." "I need to do this on my own," I said, trying to sound braver than I felt. I spent the day walking around the city, looking for work. Every rejection stung, but I refused to give up. By evening, I'd landed a job at a small diner. It wasn't glamorous, but it was a start. The first week was brutal. My feet ached from standing all day, and I struggled to keep up with the fast pace. But the other employees were kind, and for the first time in years, I felt a sense of camaraderie. One evening, as I was clearing tables, I heard a familiar voice. My stomach dropped. It was one of my parents' friends, Mrs. Davenport. She was sitting at a table with a group of women, laughing and sipping wine. "Amelia? Is that you?" she said, her eyes widening in shock as she recognized me. I froze, the tray of dirty dishes shaking in my hands. "Hello, Mrs. Davenport," I said quietly. "What on earth are you doing here?" she asked, her voice loud enough for everyone to hear. "Shouldn't you be at some fancy event with your parents?" "I work here," I said, my cheeks burning with embarrassment. She gasped, covering her mouth with her hand. "Oh, darling, what happened? Did your parents cut you off?" I didn't respond. I just turned and walked away, her laughter echoing behind me. That night, as I lay in bed, the humiliation replayed in my mind over and over. But instead of breaking me, it fueled a fire inside me. I was going to prove them all wrong. I was going to build a life so incredible, they'd regret ever underestimating me. The next morning, I woke up with a different kind of energy. The humiliation from the night before still stung, but it had sparked something in me, an unwavering determination. I stared at the ceiling, a plan slowly forming in my mind. If my parents thought I was destined to fail, I'd make sure to prove them wrong in ways they couldn't even imagine. I grabbed a notebook and started scribbling ideas. What did I want to do? What was I good at? Growing up in my family's suffocating world, I had been trained in everything from business etiquette to public speaking. I had the skills. I just needed to use them in my own way. As I made my list, Sarah walked in with 2 cups of coffee. "You look intense this morning," she said, handing me a mug. "What's going on?" "I'm done feeling sorry for myself," I said, my voice steady. "I'm going to build something they can't ignore." Her eyes lit up. "Now that's the Amelia I know. What's the plan?" I hesitated. "I don't have all the details yet, but I know I want to start my own business. Something small, something meaningful." Sarah grinned. "You've got this. And if you need help, I'm here." Her support meant everything. I didn't have much, but I had friends who believed in me. That was more than enough to get started. Starting a business was harder than I'd imagined. I spent hours researching, jotting down ideas, and reaching out to anyone who might have advice. I decided to open a small pop-up bakery. Baking had always been a passion of mine, a rare escape from the rigid expectations of my upbringing. Using the tips I'd learned from countless online tutorials, I made a batch of cupcakes and brought them to the diner. My coworkers were my guinea pigs, and to my surprise, they loved them. "These are amazing, Amelia," one of them said, taking another bite. "You could totally sell these." Encouraged by their reactions, I started small, selling baked goods at local markets on my days off. The first time someone bought one of my cupcakes, I felt a rush of pride. It wasn't much, but it was a start. One Saturday at the market, I noticed a woman lingering near my stall. She was impeccably dressed, her sharp eyes scanning my setup. After a moment, she walked up and bought a cupcake. "This is incredible," she said after taking a bite. "Do you run a bakery?" "Not yet," I admitted. "This is just a pop-up for now." She handed me her card. "Call me if you ever want to expand. I invest in small businesses, and I think you have potential." I stared at the card in disbelief. Her name was Catherine Bennett, and a quick Google search later revealed that she was a well-known entrepreneur. I couldn't believe someone like her had taken an interest in me. Over the next few weeks, I worked harder than ever. Between my shifts at the diner and baking late into the night, I barely had time to sleep. But every cupcake I sold brought me one step closer to my goal. Catherine and I stayed in touch, and she gave me invaluable advice. "Focus on your branding," she said during one of our calls. "What makes your bakery unique? What's your story?" At first, I hesitated to share my past. But then I realized that my story was what set me apart. I wasn't just another baker. I was someone who had fought to rebuild her life from scratch. I decided to name my bakery Rising Flower, a nod to my journey and resilience. A year after being disowned, I opened the doors to my first brick-and-mortar bakery. It was a small, cozy space, but it was mine. The grand opening was an emotional day. Sarah was there, of course, along with my coworkers from the diner and a handful of loyal customers who had supported me from the start. As I stood behind the counter, watching people enjoy my baked goods, I felt a sense of pride I'd never known before. This was more than a business. It was proof that I could thrive without my family's money or influence. But my journey was far from over. The bakery's success didn't go unnoticed. One afternoon, as I was restocking the display case, the doorbell jingled. I looked up and froze. My mother stood in the doorway, her expression a mix of shock and something I couldn't quite place. Was it regret or just curiosity? "Well," she said, her voice cool and clipped, "I didn't expect to find you here." I straightened my apron, forcing myself to stay calm. "What are you doing here?" She looked around, taking in the rustic charm of the bakery. "I heard about this place. I didn't realize it was yours." Her words were a slap in the face. She hadn't come to support me. She'd come to satisfy her curiosity. "I don't need your approval," I said firmly. "This is my life now." She raised an eyebrow. "We'll see how long it lasts." As she walked out, I felt a familiar pang of hurt. But this time it didn't break me. If anything, it only strengthened my resolve. My mother's visit lingered in my mind for days, not as a wound but as fuel. Her doubt was just another obstacle I'd crush underfoot. If she wanted to see me fail, she'd have to keep watching while I soared. The bakery grew busier by the week. Word spread quickly, and soon I wasn't just serving locals. I was attracting food bloggers, influencers, and even small-time journalists. One particularly busy Saturday, a reporter from the local paper came in to interview me. "Your story is inspiring," she said, setting her recorder on the counter. "From heiress to entrepreneur. People love a good comeback. What drives you?" I paused, considering her question. "Redemption," I said finally. "Not just proving others wrong, but proving to myself that I'm more than what they said I was." The article ran a week later with the headline, "Rising Flower: How One Woman Reclaimed Her Life Through Baking." It was surreal seeing my name in print, but even more surreal was what came next. The day after the article was published, the bell above the bakery door jingled, and I looked up to see someone I hadn't expected. My younger brother, Lucas. He was hesitant, standing awkwardly by the door. He looked different, more mature, but also more subdued. The confident smirk he always wore had been replaced by something softer. "Amelia," he said, almost a whisper. "Lucas," I replied, my tone cautious. "What are you doing here?" He stepped closer, his hands shoved deep into his pockets. "I read the article. I wanted to see you." For a moment, I didn't know what to say. Part of me wanted to tell him to leave, to remind him that he hadn't stood up for me when I needed him most. But another part of me, the part that missed my little brother, softened. "How's everyone?" I asked, keeping my voice neutral. "Mom and Dad are the same," he said with a shrug. "But things aren't great at home. They don't talk about it, but I think they regret what they did." I raised an eyebrow. "Do they? Or are they just upset I'm not begging to come back?" He didn't answer, which told me all I needed to know. Over the next few weeks, Lucas became a regular visitor. He'd stop by the bakery after school or on weekends, helping out when things got busy. At first, I kept my guard up, unsure of his motives. But the more time we spent together, the more I saw glimpses of the brother I'd once adored. One evening, as we closed up shop, he finally opened up. "I'm sorry, Amelia," he said, his voice thick with emotion, "for not standing up for you. I was scared of losing them, but I lost you instead." His words hit me harder than I expected. For so long, I'd thought of my family as a monolith, cold, unyielding, and unloving. But Lucas's apology reminded me that there had been good moments too, moments worth holding on to. "I appreciate that," I said quietly. "But if you're here to play peacemaker, it won't work. I'm not going back." "I know," he said. I wanted you to know I'm proud of you." With Lucas's support, the bakery reached new heights. He suggested marketing ideas like partnering with local schools for fundraising events, which brought in even more customers. For the first time, I felt like I had a family member in my corner. But success brought new challenges. Managing the bakery was becoming overwhelming, and I needed help. That's when Sarah stepped in. "You've built something incredible, Amelia," she said one night as we shared a bottle of wine. "Let me help you take it to the next level." We became business partners, expanding the bakery's menu and launching a catering service. It wasn't long before Rising Flour became a household name in the city. One evening, as I was closing up, the door opened, and my father walked in. The sight of him in my bakery felt surreal. He looked older, more tired, but his presence still carried the weight of authority. "Amelia," he said, his voice softer than I'd ever heard it. "We need to talk." I crossed my arms, leaning against the counter. "I'm listening." He hesitated, his eyes scanning the bakery. "You've done well for yourself. Better than I expected." "Thanks," I said flatly. "But I doubt you're here to congratulate me." He sighed, running a hand through his hair. "I made a mistake. We made a mistake. Your mother and I. We were too harsh. We let our pride get in the way." I stared at him, waiting for the apology I'd longed to hear for years. But it didn't come. Instead, he said, "Your mother isn't well. She's been asking for you." My chest tightened. Despite everything, a part of me still cared. But I wasn't ready to let him off the hook. "It's funny how you're only here now that things are falling apart," I said, my voice cold. "Where were you when I needed you?" He looked down, guilt etched across his face. "I'm sorry, Amelia. Truly. But we need you." For the first time, the power dynamic between us had shifted. He was no longer the unshakable figure I'd grown up fearing. He was just a man, humbled by his own mistakes. "I'll think about it," I said, turning away. "But I'm not making any promises." That night I couldn't sleep. Memories of my mother flooded my mind, both the good and the bad. I thought about the way she used to brush my hair as a child, singing softly under her breath. I thought about the slap that had marked the end of our relationship. Could I forgive her? Did I even want to? I spent the next few days grappling with my father's visit. His words echoed in my mind, mingling with old memories I'd worked so hard to suppress. Part of me wanted to walk away, to let them deal with the mess they had created. But another part, the part that still longed for closure, was curious. What did my father mean when he said my mother wasn't well? Was this some ploy to manipulate me? Or was she truly sick? Lucas noticed the change in my demeanor during one of his visits. "You're quieter than usual," he said, leaning against the counter as I prepped an order. "Something on your mind?" "Dad came by," I admitted, my voice low. His eyes widened. "What? When?" "A few nights ago. He said Mom's been asking for me. That she's not well." Lucas frowned, the carefree energy he usually brought into the bakery suddenly gone. "She's been different lately," he admitted. "Quieter. She doesn't go out as much." But I didn't think it was serious. "Do you think he's telling the truth?" I asked. He hesitated. "I don't know. But if he is, maybe you should see her." After much internal debate, I decided to go. Not for my father, and not even for my mother. I went for myself, to confront the ghosts of my past and find the answers I needed to move forward. When I arrived at the mansion, the sight of it felt both familiar and foreign. The grandeur I once took for granted now felt hollow, like a stage set built to impress but lacking any real warmth. The butler, who had always been kind to me, greeted me with a mix of surprise and relief. "Miss Amelia," he said, bowing slightly. "It's good to see you again." I nodded, unable to muster a smile. "Where is she?" He led me to the sitting room, where my mother was reclined on a chaise lounge, a blanket draped over her legs. She looked frilier than I remembered, her once radiant complexion pale and her eyes tired. But when she saw me, something flickered in her gaze, something that looked like hope. "Amelia," she said softly, her voice trembling. I stood in the doorway, unsure of how to feel. "You wanted to see me?" She nodded, tears welling up in her eyes. "I did. I wasn't sure if you'd come. I almost didn't, I admitted, my tone colder than I intended. Why now, Mom? Why ask for me after everything you said and did? She looked down, her hands trembling as they clutched the edge of the blanket. Because I was wrong, she whispered. I let my pride and fear ruin our relationship. And now, I might not have much time left to make things right. Her words cut deep, but they weren't enough to erase the years of pain she had caused. You disowned me, Mom, I said, my voice trembling. You told me I was a disgrace. Do you have any idea what that did to me? She flinched as if I had slapped her, and for a moment, I felt a pang of guilt, but I pushed it aside, determined to make her understand. I had nothing, I continued. No money, no support. I had to figure out how to survive on my own while you and Dad acted like I didn't exist. And now you expect me to forgive you because you're sick. Tears streamed down her face, but she didn't look away. I don't expect your forgiveness, she said. I don't deserve it. But I need you to know that I regret every decision I made that hurt you. You were right, Amelia, about everything. The sincerity in her voice took me by surprise. For the first time, I saw not the cold, controlling woman who had raised me but a flawed, broken person trying to atone for her mistakes. I didn't forgive her that day, but I didn't walk away either. Instead, I stayed for an hour, listening as she shared memories of the times she had been proud of me but had been too stubborn to say so. It wasn't enough to erase the past, but it was a start. As I left the mansion, I felt a strange mix of emotions. Anger, sadness, and a flicker of something I hadn't felt in years. Hope. Back at the bakery, life continued to thrive. Sarah and I were working on plans to open a second location, and our catering service was gaining traction. We had even started hosting baking classes, which quickly became a hit with the community. Despite the success, my mother's words lingered in my mind. I found myself wondering if reconciliation was truly possible, or if our wounds were too deep to heal. One afternoon, as I was teaching a baking class, my father walked in. His presence startled me, and I nearly dropped the tray of cupcakes I was holding. The students fell silent, sensing the tension in the room. Amelia, he said, his voice soft. Can we talk? I hesitated but nodded, leading him to the back office. Once the door closed, I crossed my arms and faced him. What is it now? He looked uncomfortable, his usual confidence replaced by uncertainty. Your mother told me what she said to you, about admitting she was wrong. And, I prompted, my tone sharp. And, she's not the only one who owes you an apology, he admitted. I failed you, Amelia. I failed as a father. I was so focused on maintaining our image that I forgot what really mattered. His words surprised me, but I wasn't ready to let him off the hook. You didn't just fail me, I said. You abandoned me when I needed you most. That's not something I can forget. I don't expect you to, he said, his voice heavy with regret. But I'm here now, and I want to make things right. It wasn't an instant reconciliation, but my father's visit marked another step in the healing process. Over the next few weeks, he and my mother made more of an effort to reach out, attending my baking classes and supporting the bakery. It was awkward at first, but slowly, the walls between us began to crumble. The dynamic between my parents and me grew more complex as time passed. Their gestures of reconciliation were steady but cautious. My mother started visiting the bakery more often, sitting quietly at a corner table and watching as I worked. She never demanded my attention but always smiled when I caught her eye. One day, as I was restocking the display case, she approached the counter. These are beautiful, Amelia, she said, her voice soft and genuine. Your creativity shines through in everything you do. I didn't respond immediately. I wanted to believe her words were sincere, but the scars of her past actions made me wary. Why now, Mom? I asked, my tone guarded. Why make an effort after all this time? She sighed, her hands fidgeting with the strap of her designer purse. Because I realized I've missed out on so much. I thought protecting the family name was the most important thing, but what's a name without the people who carry it? I know I can't undo the damage I've done, but I want to try. Her words tugged at something deep inside me. For years, I'd longed to hear her say something like this, but now that she had, I didn't know how to respond. It's going to take time, I said finally. And it's not just about words. I need to see actions. I understand, she said, a faint smile on her lips. And I'll prove it to you. While my relationship with my parents remained tentative, Lucas proved to be an unwavering source of support. He continued helping at the bakery, offering new ideas and learning the ins and outs of the business. You've got a knack for this? I told him one day as we worked on a catering order together. He grinned. Maybe I finally found something I'm good at. Honestly, I never thought I'd enjoy working, but this feels different. His enthusiasm was infectious, and it wasn't long before he started taking on more responsibility. He even suggested opening a third location, pitching the idea with a level of passion and detail that surprised me. You've grown up, Lucas, I said, genuinely impressed. I'm proud of you. The words seemed to mean a lot to him, and for the first time in years, I felt like we were truly siblings again. One afternoon, as I was reviewing invoices in the back office, I received a phone call from Catherine Bennett, the investor who had supported me in the early days of my business. Amelia, she said, her voice warm and enthusiastic, I've been following your progress, and I have to say, I'm impressed. Your story, your resilience, it's inspiring. Have you ever thought about franchising? The idea had crossed my mind, but I'd always dismissed it as too ambitious. I don't know, I admitted. It feels like a big step. It is, she agreed. But I think you're ready. If you're interested, I'd love to mentor you through the process. The conversation left me buzzing with excitement and nerves. Franchising would mean taking Rising Flower to a whole new level, but it also came with risks. I knew I'd need to discuss it with Sarah and Lucas before making any decisions. As I prepared for the next phase of my business, an unexpected discovery rocked my world. While cleaning out the office at the bakery, I found an envelope addressed to me. Inside was a letter from my mother, dated shortly after I had been disowned. The letter was raw and unfiltered, filled with regret and sorrow. She wrote about how she had stayed awake at night wondering if she'd made the right decision, how she'd kept tabs on me through mutual acquaintances, and how proud she was of my courage, even if she couldn't admit it at the time. By the time I finished reading, tears were streaming down my face. The letter was proof that she had cared all along, even if she hadn't shown it. Armed with the letter, I decided to confront my mother. I found her sitting in the garden at the mansion, her favorite spot. She looked up as I approached, her expression wary but hopeful. I found this, I said, holding up the letter. Why didn't you send it? She looked down, her hands trembling. Because I was a coward, she admitted. I wanted to reach out, but I was afraid you'd reject me. I didn't think I deserved your forgiveness. Her honesty disarmed me. You should have tried, I said, my voice breaking. Maybe things would have been different. I know, she said, her eyes glistening with tears. But I'm here now, and I'll do whatever it takes to make things right. For the first time, I saw her not as the cold, controlling woman who had hurt me, but as someone who was deeply flawed and genuinely remorseful. It wasn't forgiveness, not yet, but it was a start. With Catherine's guidance, Sarah, Lucas, and I began preparing to launch the first franchise of Rising Flower. The process was grueling, but the excitement of bringing our brand to new communities kept us going. On the day of the grand opening for the franchise, my entire family showed up, my mother, my father, and Lucas. Seeing them together, standing in the crowd and cheering for me, was a moment I'd never expected. It felt like a full-circle moment, a testament to how far I'd come. Years later, Rising Flower had become a nationwide brand, with franchises in dozens of cities. My parents, once my greatest critics, became some of my biggest supporters. My mother, now frail but still sharp, often visited the bakery, proudly telling anyone who would listen that her daughter was the founder. But the greatest victory wasn't the success of the business or even the reconciliation with my family. It was the person I had become. I was no longer the naive heiress or the disowned outcast. I was Amelia, a woman who had fought for her dreams and won. As I stood in the original bakery, now a landmark in the city, I felt an overwhelming sense of gratitude. The journey had been painful, but it had shaped me into someone stronger, wiser, and more compassionate. And as I watched a new generation of bakers learn their craft in the space I'd built, I knew I'd created something that would outlast me. A legacy of resilience, redemption, and rising above. It was a sweltering summer afternoon when the pristine glass doors of the Sapphire Crest Hotel swung open, revealing a young woman who didn't look like she belonged to the opulent world surrounding her. Her worn sneakers squeaked against the marble floor as she approached the grand reception desk. Her name was Emily. She carried herself with quiet confidence despite her modest appearance. A simple sundress, a faded backpack slung over her shoulder, and strands of blonde hair sticking to her face from the heat. The receptionist, Amanda, a sharp-featured woman with a razor-sharp tongue, took one look at Emily and smirked. Her tailored suit and air of superiority were weapons she wielded with precision. This girl, Amanda thought, didn't belong here. The Sapphire Crest wasn't just any hotel. It was a sanctuary for the elite, a haven for the wealthy, and a fortress against the common folk. Emily stepped up to the counter and smiled politely. "Hi, I'd like to check in, please." Amanda arched a perfectly manicured brow, her tone laced with condescension. "Are you sure you're in the right place, sweetheart? The budget motel is a couple of blocks down." Emily's cheeks flushed, but she stood her ground. "I'm in the right place. I have a reservation." Amanda sighed dramatically, flipping through her computer with an exaggerated show of reluctance. "Name? Emily Brooks." Amanda's fingers clicked against the keyboard. A frown creased her forehead as she scanned the screen. "We don't have an Emily Brooks listed here. Are you sure you made the reservation? You know, sometimes people dream big and think they can afford places like this." Emily's patience thinned. "I made the reservation, and I have the confirmation email if you'd like to see it." Amanda waved a dismissive hand. "Email confirmation means nothing. Anyone can fake one. Let's be real here, you're not exactly our usual clientele. Why don't you save yourself the embarrassment and leave?" The humiliation burned hot in Emily's chest. She dug into her backpack, pulled out her phone, and thrust it toward Amanda. "Here, check it yourself." Amanda didn't even glance at the phone. Instead, she leaned in, her voice dropping to a venomous whisper. "Honey, this is the Sapphire Crest. Do you even know how much one night here costs? We don't let just anyone walk in off the street." Emily's hand trembled, not from fear but from the sheer frustration of being judged. She opened her mouth to retort when a sharp voice cut through the tension. "What's going on here?" Both women turned. A man in his late 40s, dressed impeccably in a tailored suit, strode toward them. His presence commanded attention, and Amanda immediately straightened, her demeanor flipping into one of forced politeness. "Mr. Carter," Amanda chirped. "There's been a little misunderstanding." Emily froze. The man standing before her was her father, Jacob Brooks. Though their relationship had always been complicated, he owned the Sapphire Crest, and she knew he wouldn't stand for this treatment. Jacob's piercing blue eyes locked onto Amanda. "Misunderstanding?" Amanda hesitated. "This young woman claims she has a reservation, but as you can see," she gestured toward Emily with a sneer. "She's clearly mistaken." Jacob turned his gaze to Emily. Recognition flashed in his eyes, but he said nothing that revealed their connection. Instead, he simply asked, "Do you have a reservation, miss?" Emily nodded, her voice firm. "Yes, I do. Under the name Emily Brooks." Jacob gave a small nod. "Then it seems there's no issue. Amanda, check her in." Amanda's mouth opened and closed like a fish gasping for air. "But, Mr. Carter, she—" "Now," Jacob commanded, his tone brooking no argument. Amanda reluctantly began typing, her face a mask of resentment. "Fine. A single room, I assume?" Jacob interjected. "No, she'll have one of our suites." Amanda's head snapped up, her eyes wide with disbelief. "A suite?" "Yes, Amanda. Is that a problem?" Amanda swallowed hard. "No, of course not." As Amanda handed over the key card with trembling fingers, Emily took it, her head held high. She didn't need to say anything. Her silence was louder than words. She turned and walked away, her step steady, but her heart raced with a mix of triumph and fury. This was only the beginning. Emily wasn't going to let this insult slide. Not because of her own pride, but because she knew she had to expose the rot beneath the surface of places like this. People like Amanda thrived on unchecked power, and Emily had spent her life watching her father build his empire without understanding the cost to those trampled underfoot. As Emily entered the grand suite, her resolve solidified. It wasn't just about revenge. It was about setting things right. But she wasn't prepared for what would come next. The skeletons she'd uncover, the alliances she'd form, and the high-stakes battle that would unfold, shaking the Sapphire Crest Hotel to its core. Emily paced the lavish suite, her fingers brushing against the silken curtains, the polished wooden furniture, and the marble countertop of the minibar. The sheer extravagance of the room was a stark reminder of her father's empire, a world she had purposely distanced herself from. But now, she was back, and the fire in her chest demanded action. Her phone buzzed. She glanced at the screen to see a text from her best friend. "Mia, how's the hotel? You okay?" Emily quickly typed back. "It's complicated, but I'm not leaving until I fix this." Emily descended the grand staircase, her head held high. The lobby buzzed with activity. Businessmen barking into phones, tourists gawking at the chandeliers, and staff flitting about in hushed efficiency. Amanda stood at the reception desk, her posture stiff, her lips pursed into a thin line. Emily approached her like a storm brewing on the horizon. "Good morning," Emily said, her tone cool but edged with steel. Amanda looked up, the fake smile plastered across her face barely concealing her disdain. "Oh, it's you. Enjoying your stay?" "Immensely," Emily replied. "I'd like to speak with the manager." Amanda's smile faltered. "Mr. Carter is very busy." Emily leaned in, her voice dropping to a whisper. "Then tell him his daughter is here." Amanda froze, her eyes darting toward the office door. "The daughter?" Emily crossed her arms, waiting. Amanda stammered out an apology before disappearing into the office. Moments later, Jacob emerged, his expression unreadable. "Emily," he said, his voice steady. "Let's talk somewhere private." In his office, Jacob gestured for Emily to sit, but she remained standing. The tension between them crackled like static electricity. "What are you doing here?" he asked, leaning against his desk. "Trying to enjoy a vacation," Emily replied. "But your staff had other ideas." Jacob sighed. "I'll handle Amanda. She'll apologize." Emily's laugh was bitter. "This isn't just about her. It's about everything, the way people like her treat others because they think they can. The way this place thrives on exclusivity while stomping on anyone who doesn't fit the mold." Jacob's jaw tightened. "You don't understand how the business works, Emily. We cater to a specific clientele. And that gives your staff the right to humiliate people?" She shot back. "You've built a palace for the rich and powerful. But at what cost?" Jacob ran a hand through his hair, frustration etched across his face. "What do you want me to do?" "Let me work here," Emily said suddenly. Jacob blinked. "What?" "You heard me. I want to work here. Start at the bottom, see what really goes on. I won't tell anyone who I am. Just let me do this." Jacob hesitated. "You don't know what you're asking for." "I know exactly what I'm asking for," Emily said. "Unless you're afraid I'll uncover something you don't want to see." Her words hung in the air like a challenge. Jacob finally nodded. "Fine. But don't expect any special treatment." Emily's first shift began at the front desk. Amanda, who had clearly been briefed to keep her behavior in check, handed Emily a crisp uniform. "Try not to embarrass us," she said with a forced smile. Emily smirked. "I'll do my best." Her tasks were mundane, checking in guests, answering phones, and directing inquiries. But it didn't take long for her to see the cracks in the hotel's pristine facade. Staff whispered about unfair workloads, guests complained about overcharges, and the air reeked of silent desperation. One particularly tense moment came when a harried housekeeper named Rosa approached Amanda, nervously clutching a cleaning schedule. "I can't do all these rooms in one shift," Rosa said, her voice trembling. "It's too much." Amanda's response was icy. "Then maybe you're not cut out for this job." Emily watched, her fists clenched, as Rosa retreated, tears brimming in her eyes. It was the same dynamic she had experienced at the front desk. Only now it was clear that Amanda's cruelty extended far beyond her. By the end of her first week, Emily had earned the trust of several staff members, including Rosa and a young bellboy named Daniel. She listened to their stories of mistreatment, long hours, and low pay. Slowly, a plan began to form in her mind. Late one night, she gathered a small group in the break room. "This place needs to change," she said. "But we can't do it alone." Rosa looked skeptical. "What can we do? They'll fire us if we speak out." "They won't fire all of us," Emily said. "We need to stand together, expose what's really going on here." Daniel nodded. "But how do we do that?" Emily smiled, a spark of determination in her eyes. "Leave that to me." Emily spent the next few weeks gathering evidence. Photos of unsafe working conditions, recordings of Amanda's verbal abuse, and testimonies from staff. She even managed to capture video footage of a high-ranking manager skimming money from the hotel's accounts. With everything compiled, she approached her father. This time, she didn't ask for permission. She demanded action. "Emily, this could ruin us," Jacob said, his face pale as he reviewed the evidence. "Or it could save us," she countered. "You always taught me to fight for what's right. Now's your chance to prove you meant it." Jacob's gaze softened. For the first time, he saw not just his daughter but a fierce, determined woman standing before him. "All right," he said. "Let's do this." What followed was a storm of media attention. Emily and Jacob held a press conference, exposing the corruption and pledging to rebuild the Sapphire Crest as a place of integrity. Amanda and the corrupt manager were fired, and the staff received better pay and treatment. The journey wasn't easy, and the road ahead was long. But as Emily stood in the lobby, watching Rosa smile for the first time in weeks, she knew it had all been worth it. The Sapphire Crest Hotel had always been a beacon of luxury, but now it was on the verge of becoming something far greater, a symbol of transformation. Emily's actions had sparked a revolution, both within the hotel and beyond its glittering walls. But as the dust settled, the real work began. The hotel's reputation hung by a thread, and both Emily and her father knew they had to rebuild not just its image, but its very foundation. Emily sat in the newly renovated break room with Rosa, Daniel, and a few other staff members. The atmosphere was tense, but it carried a sense of hope. Jacob entered the room, looking uncharacteristically humble. "Thank you all for coming," he began. "I know the past few months have been hard, harder than they should have been. And for that, I take full responsibility." The staff exchanged wary glances. Jacob continued, "This hotel was my dream, but somewhere along the way, I lost sight of what really matters, the people who make it all possible. That changes today. Starting now, every decision we make will prioritize fairness, respect, and dignity for everyone here." Emily watched her father closely. His voice lacked its usual commanding tone, replaced instead with genuine regret. She felt a pang of something she hadn't expected, pride. Daniel raised a hand hesitantly. "What about the pay cuts we've been dealing with? And the impossible schedules?" Jacob nodded. "Those were wrong and we're fixing them. Effective immediately, wages will be increased to a fair rate, and scheduling will be adjusted to ensure no one is overworked." Rosa spoke up, her voice trembling. "And Amanda? Will there be more people like her?" Emily stepped in. "That's why we're establishing a staff council, so you all have a voice in how things are run. If there's ever another Amanda, you'll have the power to hold them accountable." The room buzzed with cautious optimism. Emily didn't stop there. She worked tirelessly alongside Jacob to implement changes. They partnered with local organizations to ensure fair hiring practices and launched an employee wellness program. Weekly staff meetings became a norm, giving everyone a platform to voice their concerns and suggestions. The transformation wasn't just internal. Guests began to notice the changes too. The staff were more relaxed, their smiles genuine. Reviews poured in, praising not just the hotel's luxury, but the warmth and hospitality of its employees. Meanwhile, Amanda's story took a darker turn. After being fired, She attempted to sue the hotel for wrongful termination, but Emily's mountain of evidence crushed her claims. Her reputation in the hospitality industry was ruined, and she struggled to find work. One day, Emily spotted Amanda outside a coffee shop, looking disheveled and defeated. Against her better judgment, Emily approached her. "Amanda," she said softly. Amanda looked up, her eyes narrowing. "What do you want? Come to gloat?" "No," Emily replied. "I came to see if you're okay." Amanda laughed bitterly. "Do I look okay?" Emily hesitated. "You made some bad choices, but that doesn't mean you can't start over. Everyone deserves a second chance, if they're willing to change." Amanda's expression softened, but she quickly masked it with a scoff. "Spare me your pity," Emily sighed, handing her a card. "If you ever decide you want help, call me." As she walked away, Emily couldn't help but wonder if Amanda would ever take her up on the offer. Months later, the Sapphire Crest held its grand reopening. The event was a spectacle, with glittering lights, a red carpet, and a guest list filled with influential figures. But for Emily, the real highlight was seeing the staff, dressed to the nines, laughing and mingling with the guests, their confidence radiating. Jacob took the stage to give a speech, but instead of addressing the crowd, he turned to Emily. "This hotel is more than just a business. It's a legacy. And tonight, I want to recognize the person who reminded me what that legacy should stand for. Emily, thank you for showing me what true leadership looks like." The crowd erupted into applause, but Emily's focus was on the faces of the staff. Their smiles were all the recognition she needed. In the weeks that followed, Emily considered her next steps. The Sapphire Crest was thriving, but her work there felt complete. One evening, Jacob found her sitting on the balcony of the suite she had once checked into under such different circumstances. "You're leaving, aren't you?" he asked. Emily nodded. "There's so much more I want to do." "This was just the beginning." Jacob smiled, a rare warmth in his eyes. "Wherever you go, you'll make a difference." "I'm proud of you, Emily." For the first time in years, Emily felt the weight of their complicated history lift. "Thanks, Dad." As Emily packed her bags, she looked around the room one last time. The Sapphire Crest had been a battleground, a classroom, and a home. It had changed her as much as she had changed it. With one final glance at the hotel's glowing facade, Emily stepped into the waiting cab, ready to take on whatever challenge came next. Because if there was one thing she had learned, it was that true change always starts with one person daring to take a stand.